This is a Tanfoglio Limited Custom 40 Smith & Wesson, and it is my primary competition gun that I use in Standard Division for IPSC shooting. I've got two Limited Customs. This is my backup, and it's identical to my hard chrome, other than the fact that this has a gun coat finish. So before I carry on with the review of the Limited Custom, what I'd like to do is tell you some of the key factors, key criteria that I use when I go looking for a gun. So besides quality, which is a given, I always want to get a quality gun. Things that I look for, one of the key things is how does it feel in my hand? It's got to feel right in my hands. If it doesn't feel comfortable, if there's something that is making it feel odd, I'll try to determine what that is exactly and see if I can mitigate it perhaps. As an example, if the grips aren't exactly what I want, it's most likely you can get some other grips which will change the feel. So that's something that's okay. But in general terms, I'm looking for the weight, to feel just how it feels in my hand in terms of the weight, because I do prefer a heavier gun than to a lighter gun. I'm trying to determine the balance as well. Something that I might also consider is the safety, oversized safety, so that my thumb can sit on it nicely. So in general terms, I'm looking at the weight, the balance, the feel of how it fits in my hand. That is one of the key things. I'm looking at the forestrap, how sharp the forestrap and backstrap is, because that's important to obtaining a really nice grip on the gun, along with how sharp or aggressive the grips are themselves, the grip panels. Something else that I'll be looking at is in terms of the feel and how it fits in my hand, is how easy is it to access the mag release button. In this case, with my Tanfoglio, my Limited Custom here, I don't even have to move the gun in my hand. I can just reach that mag release button very easily with my thumb, and out comes the mag. So that's something I do like. It does have a very nice oversized mag release button. Something else I'm looking at are the sights. Obviously the sights are important for accuracy. I prefer fiber sight over an iron sight, but again, if it comes with an iron sight but a fiber sight is available, that's something easy to swap out. The rear sight, though, I do prefer a fully adjustable rear sight for both windage and elevation. And I would really like that to come with the pistol. I don't necessarily want to have to install a different rear sight. And finally, the trigger. I'd like a smooth trigger. I don't want it to be rough when I'm pulling back, or that there's a particular point as you're pulling back on the trigger that the trigger sort of stops. It grinds or something. It's got to be nice and smooth. And I would prefer it light, but again, you can do a trigger job to get that trigger down to as light as you want. So those are a few key criteria that I initially look for when I'm looking at a new gun. The Limited Custom is my Standard Division gun, as I said. I've got about 32,000 rounds through the hard chrome and 15,000 plus through the Gun Kote. I've been shooting them for a little over 6 years in IPSC. What I really like about the Limited Custom is, the first thing is, it did fit my hands extremely nice. I picked up this gun and immediately I knew that this was a gun I had to have. Just the way it felt in my hand. Everything seemed perfect. Even with the factory grips that were on it. These are the Xtreme grips, which I only put on about 2 years after I had the gun. But weight, I really do like the weight, and I like the feel of this. It met that criteria. The forestrap and back straps are extremely sharp. They really do help in giving you a nice firm grip. Now I have larger hands as well, and this is a full-size gun. It is big, so people with smaller hands might find this gun a little big, but if you were to put Xtreme grips on it, it will reduce the size of the grip slightly, so that might very well mitigate that particular issue if you have smaller hands. But I really do like the grip on this, the forestrap and back strap, along with these Xtreme grips. Very nice, and gives you a really nice grip on the gun itself. The guns, both my guns, I have upgraded them both with all of the Xtreme parts, pretty much all of the Xtreme parts. Both guns right now have the factory hammers on them. I do have some Xtreme hammers, but they require me to do some sear work, and I'm not ready yet to do that. I don't really want to do that, and tell you the truth, I'm pretty happy with these hammers as it is. Otherwise, I pretty much have all the Xtreme parts in both these guns. For one exception, in terms of the triggers, I've got a Henning trigger in this gun, a Henning flat trigger, which I absolutely love. I much prefer the Henning trigger over the Xtreme flat trigger. It's not a bad trigger at all. It's a nice trigger, but that Henning trigger I think is all that much nicer. And it's the shape of the Henning trigger itself. You can see it's sort of squarish, and I like that. And I like being able to use the edge here to tell me just where my finger is. It helps me identify that right location, that I'm getting my finger, you know, on that trigger, always in the exact same spot that I like. With the Xtreme trigger, this particular one, you may not see it in the video, but it does have some serrations down here, so some texturing, which is nice. But if you ask me which trigger I prefer, I'll tell you that the Henning trigger is the way to go. The only other part in this hard chrome that is not the Xtreme, an Xtreme part, is the guide rod and recoil spring. I've got a DPM reduction system in here, and I'll talk about that a little later. So back to the weight of the gun. This is a heavier gun at 2 pounds 12 ounces, which I like. The weight contributes to your ability to control the recoil, and that's the big difference in my view between a heavier gun and a lighter gun. You shoot something like the Glock, which is a polymer gun, you don't have a lot of weight there, helping you with your recoil control. You actually have to, put more into your recoil control because the gun is not going to help you. Whereas with something like this, it will. It is heavier. It's really nicely balanced, and as you can see, I've got slide lightning. This comes from the factory like this. I understand in the States, the limited customs sold by EAA, for instance, don't have slide lightning. All the ones sold in Canada and Europe all have the slide lightning. I will talk a little later about a bad thing in terms of lightning. In fact, I'll do that now. Here is my original slide. After about, I think it was 15,000 rounds, cracks started to develop down in here. You see the guide rod housing here has been lightened. That was a mistake. By lightening this, that now took away some of the strength that this required. Okay, and what happened, you can just see it. I've outlined it in a red marker. You can see 2 cracks. There's a crack here, and the other crack is up in the front. You can just see the line right there. Those 2 cracks are right through the housing. Tanfoglio recognized the fact that that was not a good idea, and they didn't hesitate to change my slide. And from what I understand, anyone else who brought forward that issue to Tanfoglio, once they showed them that their slide had cracked in those locations, they replaced their slides. So there is a bad thing. As I said, I would tell you the good and bad in my reviews, but they don't make the slides like this anymore. They don't lighten them. So the 2 slides I have in both of these guns are in fact not lightened in that area. The Magwell on the Limited is extremely nice. It is really a nice size. I'll give you a look here at it. you've got a nice size opening in there. And I tell you, for speed reloads, there's nothing like this gun. I've got other guns with Magwells, and they simply don't compare. As an example, the CZ Tactical Sport Orange, which I have, and I'll review later, that Magwell is not as nice as this one. I can speed reload with this significantly faster than I can with the Tactical Sport Orange. Magwell on the Limited Custom, though, is a beauty. That's definitely a big plus for this gun. Mag release button, a really nice size, you can see that. And as I was saying, it is extremely easy for me to reach that. Now I do have big hands, you know, I admit, but I don't have to change my grip when I need to release that magazine. That just comes flying out. And that's another thing, is this magazine will come out of the gun at, you know, at the most extreme angle. It flies out. And I have shot other guns where that just doesn't happen. If you've got the gun at this angle here, that mag just sort of, on other guns, just creeps out, and not with the Limited Custom. The mag really does fly out fast, which is nice. The beaver tail, extremely nice beaver tail on this. It's quite large. It's a full-size beaver tail. And what's nice about it is it comes up high, which allows you to get your hand in there, you know, really high and up close to the slide, right? Because that's what you want, because that's what's going to help you with your recoil management as well, to keep that gun from coming up, getting the hand in high. And so it's the cut here in the pistol grip that is very nice with this particular gun, and the fact that it does have a nice large beaver tail. Now, in fact, I've had to grind my beaver tail down. You can probably just see that. I used my Dremel. I had to grind it down by 2 millimeters because the gun was just too tight in the IPSC box when I put it in there. Getting it in there was a job, but getting it out was even harder. So taking 2 millimeters off of it really did the trick, and I had to do the same on both guns. You can see it on here, clearly see it on here, because I've taken the gun coat off. So it's sort of a funny thing that the gun was really almost too big, you might say, to fit in the box, and it is a standard gun. The trigger guard itself is quite large, which I like in comparison to other guns. You know, you never have an issue getting your finger in there fast, so that's nice. But what's more important here is not so much the size of the trigger guard, but it's the undercut that you have right here in that trigger guard. That again allows you to get your hand up nice and high, higher and tighter onto the pistol grip itself. So that's another nice feature, that undercut here. That's a really nice feature on the limited custom. So if you look at the combination of the beaver tail and the cut that you have in here, along with the undercut here, you can see that you can really get your hand up nice and high on the gun. So that's something that I really do like. The slide. Let's look at the slide quickly. It has front serrations and rear serrations on it for cocking, and they really are nice and sharp. There's no doubt about that. Now, once you put a thumb rest on the gun, you can't really use the front ones. The front ones are out of action. There's just no way you can do that because you run into the thumb rest. So you are stuck at cocking the gun from the rear, which really, in all honesty, is not an issue. I don't find it an issue. It doesn't slow me down any. When I didn't have the thumb rest on, and I only put the thumb rest on 2 years ago, I would cock from the front, but it took me a very small time adjustment period to get used to only going to the back, and now I'm so used to it, it makes no difference. But they are nice and sharp, and if you didn't put a thumb rest on the gun, you do have the option then of using the front serrations for cocking as well. The slide release I can reach it with my thumb, but then again, I do have a large hand, and it's very easy in comparison to other guns. You know, you really have to force. Now, I do have 32,000 rounds plus through the gun, so it's worked in, it's broken in, and I understand that, and I accept that. But from the very beginning, I did not find the slide release very hard, difficult to release on this gun whatsoever. Another nice feature is once my gun got broken in, and I don't know, I think it was around 500 rounds or so. These are dummy rounds, by the way, okay? My mags are filled with real dummy rounds as well, and there are no primers. You can see no primers in there, so I'm all nice and safe. I like to do dry practice with the real weight of what the magazine would feel like if it had live ammunition. So that's why I have the dummy rounds made, and then I use snap caps as the first two usually, and that's just to make sure that I'm always doubly safe. I know that they are not live rounds. But what I want to show you is, once this gun got broken in, at around 500 rounds I think, I could slam home the magazine and I don't have to touch that slide release. So if I run the gun dry, I know for a fact that when I go to put the fresh magazine in, that slide is going forward. On both guns it works like that, and that makes for a really nice, fast and smooth speed reload. So that is something that I really do like. Not all guns end up that way, you know, once they're worked in. Some do, some don't. Sometimes it all depends. Once you change the slide lock on it and work that in, it does, the gun does start to operate that way. But definitely my two limited customs, and in fact my stock 3 as well, and my gold custom all work that way, and I really like that fact. Okay, so let's put the magazines away. I talked about the Lightning already on the slide. Let's just give you another look here at the Lightning. It does make this gun look pretty sharp. Let's talk about the safety. It's ambidextrous safety on the gun, and look at how large that safety is. That's a beautiful size safety. I wish my Tactical Orange had a safety that size, but the Tanfoglio Limited, it came with that from the factory, and what that allows me to do is to rest my thumb on there very, very nicely. There is just no way you're going to miss the, you know, deactivating the safety when you pull this out of the holster on the draw. It's nice and big, and it does help you in keeping that gun down. It allows you to put some pressure on the gun to help with your recoil control. So extremely, extremely nice. The thumb rest that I've got on here as well, it's an RHT thumb rest, and the thumb rest I only put on about 2 years ago, and it took me a little bit of time to get used to it, but not that much time. But I quickly realized that if I put too much force onto that gas pedal or thumb rest, you could in fact be pushing that muzzle down and shooting lower in the target. So that's something you do have to get used to and figure out just what the right pressure is that you need to put on that to give you that extra ability for recoil control, and use that thumb rest to its maximum ability or capability. So back to the safeties, extremely nice size on there, and even on the opposite side, that's not too bad. It is a little bigger than some other safeties on other guns, such as the Tactical Orange. If I'm not mistaken, the right side of the Tanfoglio is in fact bigger than the right side of the Tactical Orange. So safety, really nice on here in terms of easily disengaged because of the size, and you've got a nice platform there. Get that thumb on top and keep that safety down during your shooting. Front sight. The Limited Custom comes with 2 front sights. It comes with a iron front sight and the fiber front sight. This is the Xtreme front sight. The factory fiber front sight is a little different than the Xtreme. Just the way it's it's designed. I think the Xtreme fiber sight brings in a little more light, seems to be a little easier to acquire. So I bought them, I put them in. I was putting all the other Xtreme parts in, so I thought, what the heck, I'll go all the way, and I did. The rear sight is an LPA sight, and it's adjustable for windage. You can see the serrations here, that cuts down on glare, which is nice. It's a nice size rear sight, good size notch in there, and it is very easy to get that front sight in there. Sight alignment, I find, is easy with this gun. I mean, that's one other reason why I like fiber front sights for my competition guns. Is, I mean, IPSC, USPSA, it's fast shooting, you know, or Steel Challenge, it's fast shooting. You've got to be able to acquire that, you know, sight fast, and a fiber sight just helps it, helps the acquirement of the sight just all that much more. You know, makes it much more quicker, I think. The LPA sight, I have had problems with it in that the elevation screw would turn on its own. I fixed that very easily. I just took some Teflon tape, wrapped it around the screw, and put it back in there, and that's it. Bob's your uncle. No problems since. Every once in a while I got to replace the Teflon tape, but you know, it takes quite a few rounds before you need to replace that. So that is something that I'll mention right now, is that would be something you'd want to do, is put some Teflon tape around that screw. Just makes it all that much tighter, and you won't have to worry about it going out of adjustment. The hammer on my gun is in fact the stock hammer. I do have an Xtreme hammer. Didn't want to do the sear work because usually it takes you at least one sear. You'll ruin one sear before you get it right, and I'm happy with this, with the factory hammer, so I'm not changing it right now. The trigger, though, as I said, this is a Henning flat trigger. That's the trigger to go for. That's what I highly recommend to everybody who has a limited custom. Get that Henning flat trigger. Really nice, and I tell you, depending on how far, you know, how low you grab that trigger, you can reduce your trigger pull because it's leverage, right? The lower you go, you got more leverage, and you'd be amazed at how much lighter it is if you get used to bringing your finger all the way down. And that's roughly where I have my finger, right down here at the bottom. That can reduce the trigger pull weight maybe by not quite a quarter, but enough that I notice it when I, you know, if I were to pull it up here. And when I take my trigger pull gauge, I notice the difference. I run it from the top all the way down to the bottom to get measurements, and there's quite a bit of difference between the center and, you know, the very bottom, where you can in fact get your finger down in there. It's a nice smooth trigger, very easy to install and very easy to take out, you know, for cleaning. Much easier than the factory trigger or the Xtreme trigger. You know, Henning did a great job in the design of this trigger and how it can be installed and adjusted with its springs in terms of over travel and pre-travel. Now, over travel, pre-travel are adjustable on both these triggers, on the Xtreme trigger and on the Henning trigger, but it is significantly easier to adjust on the Henning trigger, and that was one other reason why I prefer the Henning trigger. So really nice trigger. Something else as well, there's no rolling pin here. The rolling pin would be there for the trigger if it was a factory trigger or the Xtreme, and you can see, let's see there. There's the rolling pin. Rolling right there. There's the rolling pin, right? Well, this is actually a bolt. Henning made a bolt, and you can see the nut right here on this side. That makes it extremely nice to get in and out. You know, get that trigger in and to remove it. So very nice. In fact, I do have a second pin I bought from Henning, which I'm going to put, or bolt that I'm going to put through this one. So I've got them on both guns. Just have to get around to doing it. Now I mentioned that I don't have the Xtreme guide rod and recoil spring in this one because I have the DPM Recoil Reduction System in this. In this one I do have the Xtreme guide rod, and you can see it actually pokes out a little more than the factory one does. It's just that much longer. It also adds about 10%. It's about 10% heavier than the factory rod, so that gives you a little more weight in the front. But it's also designed a little better, so it will wear differently than the factory guide rod. It will last longer, basically, and also it will reduce the wear in the gun itself as well, not just to the guide rod, but to the gun itself. Now, in this gun, I do have the DPM Recoil Reduction System, which I really do like, and I'm probably going to pick a second one up and put it in my backup gun. Right now, what I do is I swap it out. When I take my backup gun, I take it out of the primary and put it in. So this is the DPM Recoil Reduction System. Okay, what it is 3 springs basically. So here's your recoil rod. There are 2 springs inside. You can see one here, and there's another one down inside here. And then you got the outer spring, and that's the adjustable spring. For the Limited Custom, it comes with 5 different size springs for you to adjust, for you to be able to tune the DPM to your gun and your ammunition. And not only does it come with 5 different springs, which then gives you 5 particular options, it also comes with 2 of these bushings, the spring bushings. And what it is the second one I have is not cut as deep, and what that does is it has an effect on the spring, because this one allows the spring to go in further. The other one pushes back on the spring, so that changes the tension of the spring. So in effect you have 10 possibilities, because if you swap out this bushing for the other one, the springs will now react differently, those 5 other springs. So it's almost like having 10 springs to play with to tune your gun. So it's a nice system. I've got about 7 of these DPM recoil reduction systems for different guns. For my Beretta 92F, for my tactical sport orange, I have one. My CZ P07. Anyways, they're available for a lot of guns, or 1911s and so forth. Just go on the internet, Google it, DPM Recoil Reduction System, and you'll find them, and you can find out if they have one for your gun. They also have a good video out on the DPM explaining just how it works. So I'm not going to go and explain any more than what I did right now, other than to tell you there are 2 springs in here, and you have the outer spring, which allows you to tune this to your gun. And I will tell you that there is a marked difference between using the regular recoil rod and recoil spring, and the DPM. I noticed it immediately when I got out onto the range. It really does reduce the flip and dip of the recoil. It helped keep my gun flatter, without a doubt. But it's a combination, right, of making sure you tune your ammunition to your gun as well, and in this case, once you have the DPM in, it's tuning everything, right? Getting the right spring for the DPM to work with the ammunition you have, and tuning your ammunition to help you reduce that flip and dip. But right off the bat, no matter what ammo you were to use, if you put the DPM in, you will notice the difference. I certainly did, and I swear by it, and that's why I'm running it in my competition gun. And I will be getting a second one, so that I don't forget to swap it out, as I've had in the past. And believe me, as soon as I pull that trigger, I realize that I have not swapped it out, because I can feel the difference. There's more muzzle flip and dip, without a doubt. So that is the DPM. Something else I should talk about is when you start to lighten your trigger on your gun, there will come a point where your factory firing pin, you'll be getting light strikes on the primers, and that's because your factory firing pin is not long enough. If you get the Xtreme, Xtreme hammer and Xtreme trigger and so forth, and you do your trigger job, for instance, and you start to lighten that trigger, as soon as you get it down to around 3 pounds, the factory firing pin may not work all the time. So what I'm saying is, if you get any of the Xtreme parts, you know, go all the way and make sure you get the Xtreme firing pin and the recoil spring. Because if you swap out the hammer spring on this, you do a trigger job on this, you put the flat trigger on, whether it's the Henning trigger or the Xtreme trigger, it doesn't matter. As soon as you start lightening that trigger, when you get to about 2 pounds, the factory pin, firing pin, is not always going to work. You're going to get some light strikes. You definitely need a longer firing pin, and that's what the Xtreme firing pin is. And it's a combination of the Xtreme firing pin and the firing pin spring that makes the difference. So something to think about when you start lightening your trigger. Okay, magazines. Let's talk about magazines. This is the original magazine that comes with the gun. I mean, they're all chrome. The ones I have are all chrome. In some cases now you can't get the chrome. I think. I think now they're only selling the blue version. But this is the original with the original base pad. I have 2 base pads. These are the Xtreme, Eric Grauffel Xtreme base pads. These base pads are extremely nice, the ones that come from the factory. But you can when you do a speed reload, you can get your palm caught in here sometimes, squeezed in, because you can see how tight it is all around. Still an extremely nice base pad. It sticks out a little bit, which really helps for seating the magazine in the gun to make sure you got positive seating. But you see, there's Eric's Xtreme base pad. There's a lot of space in there. It sticks out a little more, still fits the box, the standard box, and you'll never get your palm pinched in there. I mean, it only takes one time you pinch it really bad, and then for the rest of the match, you're watching yourself as you do your speed reloads. It's just human nature because of pain, right? But the point is here is that with the Xtreme base pads, they do stick out a little bit more, which gives you just that little more ability to make sure you seat that magazine in better, and you're not going to catch your palm in here between the magazine and the Magwell, because there's enough space. And again, you can see the difference. Okay, so overall impression of the Tanfoglio Limited here is that it is an extremely nice standard division gun. There's no doubt about it. It is solidly built, all steel gun, has nice weight to it, nicely balanced. You know, the fact that it has pre-drilled hole on both sides, they're a pre-drilled hole for your thumb rest. So if you're a left-handed shooter, the holes are already there with your thumb rest in. So that is nice. So it's nice that you can have that put on there. Fully adjustable rear sights, fiber front sight from the factory. Wooden grips from the factory, but you know, the wooden grips might be good for you. You may be happy with them. I was already starting to buy all the Xtreme parts, so I went all the way and bought the grips as well, and I'm very happy with them. They are nice and sharp. They do give me a slightly better grip, and they change the size of and feel of the pistol grip itself, and made it better for me personally. You know, you will have to do a trigger job on it if you buy the standard Tanfoglio Limited Custom. If you buy the Xtreme version of this gun, the trigger job's already done, and of course you got all the Xtreme parts. So if the expense of buying the Xtreme is not an issue, then buy the Xtreme. If it is, you know, don't worry. You buy the regular Limited Custom, and as you get the funds, you slowly swap out the parts for the Xtreme parts. But in the meantime, the one thing you can do with your stock limited custom is do a trigger job yourself, get that trigger bar out, polish it all up really nice, along with the trigger plunger. You polish that up, and you can knock off 3 pounds easily off the hammer. Go from 5, because it comes out of the box. Unfortunately, the standard limited custom comes out of the box with a 5-pound trigger pull. That's pretty heavy. I believe the Xtremes come with a 2-pound trigger pull, or thereabouts. Could be a little lighter. But after I did my trigger job, polishing up the trigger bar and the trigger plunger, I got it down very fast to 3 pounds. And once I changed the trigger itself and put a flat trigger, I knocked off about a 1/2 pound, along with the putting in the Xtreme firing pin. If you put the Xtreme firing pin, the model that does not need the firing pin block, you can cut the trigger pull down by a 1/4 pound. And then if you put in the hammer spring, the Xtreme hammer spring, that also helps. So all of a sudden, I got the trigger down in this gun, because in this gun I have the firing pin that does not require the firing pin block, safety block. Whereas in this one, I have the Xtreme firing pin that requires the firing pin safety block. Removing the safety block takes away some of the added friction when pulling on the trigger, okay? And it reduces the weight by about a 1/4 pound. So that's why this one is sitting at 1 pound 12 ounces, whereas I've got this one, it might be a hair under 2 pounds, but let's just say 2 pounds is what the trigger pull is on this one. And that is because of the firing pin that I have in here, which requires the firing pin safety block. So overall, extremely nice gun. I'm happy that I upgraded my gun with all the Xtreme parts. I did the trigger job myself, so I saved $250 probably right there. I had the ability to do it, so I did it. I'm very happy with it, with this gun. Been shooting it for 6+ years, as I said. I've got over 32,000 rounds through this gun, and about 15,000 rounds through this gun as well. Tanfoglio Limited Custom, extremely nice gun. Highly recommended as a standard division gun. I hope this has been a useful review. I've gone over the various features of the gun, given you my thoughts on it. Hopefully I've covered everything. If not, please ask me questions, make comments down in the comments box of the video, and I will definitely get back to you as soon as I can. If I forgot anything once I review my video, I think I forgot some key points, I will put them in the comments box or the video description. So do take the time to have a quick read through that video description, because there may be something key in there that I've added because I realized I forgot to mention it in the video. Alright, that's it for the Tanfoglio Limited Custom. Give you one last look at the gun. You see that safety, really nice. The Eric Grauffel grips are very nice. And look at the back strap and forestrap. I think it's 25 lines per inch. I mean, and it's sharp. It really is. It really does give you a good grip between the grip panels and the back strap and forestrap. And that Magwell, nice and big. Maybe somebody wants to ask me why I have a red dot right there. I gotta redo that and make it a little more red. Why I have a red dot on my Magwell. Anyways, I'll let someone ask the question and I'll give you the answer. It is in one of my videos. If you look up my speed reload video, you'll know why I put a red dot right there on my Magwell. Alright, I'll look forward to any questions or comments that you may have, and hopefully we have a nice discussion on the Limited Custom. I hope the information I provided is useful, and I haven't decided yet what the next gun will be that I review, but in all likelihood I think I may do the CZ Tactical Sport orange, because it's another standard gun, and therefore I'll do 2 standard guns back to back. That is my newest competition gun. I think that's it on the guns. Thanks for watching.